Okay, so um, I've already got it installed in my environment. So what I'll do, I'll just really kind of go through the steps that you guys would follow, and the actual installation itself for the desktop for Metadact application is relatively straightforward. So you would install the software, um, and that is really just a matter of running the metadact.msi command. Now we have got various switches with the MSI exec command that you can use for a silent install if you wanted to package it up and deploy it through a deployment tool like SCCM, for example. And those switches include the ability to add the license key and and other options that you may want to install and accept license agreements and that sort of thing. So the actual installation is relatively straightforward, and the actual, if you go through the manual GUI installation, it really is just a matter of accepting the defaults and putting in the license key, and you're good to go. Once Metadact itself is installed, then the LAP will be installed, and that comes with, when you download a zip file, you will get the LAP bundled with it. So I'm just going to show you here. So here we can see metadact.msi, and this file here, lcp cfg7m.msi, it's not the best name there, but that's the LAP, and that's used to configure the Metadact application, and it does also configure other Litera applications. So we'll take a look at that LAP during this session, so you guys really get a good idea of how to configure the Metadact product. Just to let you know that the LAP, the Terra Administrator Panel, only gets installed on one computer. So you have a set of like your sort of gold settings that you will deploy firm-wide to all of your users. And I'll just show you exactly where those settings are stored. I might be sort of getting slightly ahead of myself here, but just it gives you an idea of how the LAP works and where it stores all of its settings. So we have program data, which is a default Windows folder where applications store their settings. And if we go into Litera, we'll see various folders in here, and these contain settings for different Litera applications. And the ones we're really interested in are customize, and within this folder we have these XML files that contain the settings for the application. We also have corporate cleaning profiles, which contain PFL files, and they're the actual cleaning profiles, which again we'll look at during this session. So what we'd normally do, once we've configured all the settings that we want, and they're all stored within this folder, when we deploy Metadact, so that the Metadact MSI, once we deploy that out to the client computers, we'll also deploy all of these folders to the same location on the client computer. So C program data Litera, and all of these folders will get deployed so that the users pick up the settings that we've configured using the LAP. And so that's really, it's kind of two steps to the deployment. There's the metadact.msi package that we deploy, and then the settings that get deployed. And you can use like a group policy, a GPO, to push out these settings. In user settings, we have a preferences section that lets you copy files and folders from a file share. So that's one way you could deploy these settings, or you could also script it or use a tool like SCCM to deploy them. But GPOs tends to be a preferred way of doing it. It's quite popular. So that's kind of the things to think about with the deployment. So what I'll do is I'm just going to start up Outlook and go through Metadact itself, the ribbon and what it looks like, just so that you guys have a good picture of Metadact before we kind of jump into the settings and go through everything in the LAP. So this will give you kind of a good idea of what we're actually configuring in the LAP. So the Outlook add-in is going to be the main area that users interact with Metadact. You know, so the cleaning normally comes into play when users are sending emails and we want them cleaned before they reach the recipient. We do also have a desktop application, and that is used if you wanted to clean files that you're not intending to send by email. So you might be uploading some documents to OneDrive, you might be sharing some files with a USB drive, and you want them to be cleaned before sharing them. And so you could use the desktop application to do that. And we'll have a look at the desktop application as well. But let's head back to Outlook. And what I'll do, I'll work my way through all of these buttons so that we've got a good idea of what they do. And then we'll look at how we configure them. So we've got this Litera tab, and we've got this Litera tab on the main Outlook window and also in the Outlook message window that I'll come to after I've gone through these. And just to let you know, all of the buttons that we see here, and it goes from cleaning on all the way up to this about section here. This is for Change Pro, so we won't be looking at these buttons here. So these buttons are all configurable, so we can hide those buttons if we wanted to and prevent users from actually seeing them. But at the moment, I've got everything enabled, so you know exactly what's available to the users. So this first button, cleaning on, if I press that, you'll see that everything becomes grayed out. And effectively, what we've done is disabled Metadact. So we've turned cleaning off, and emails won't be cleaned at all. As you might expect, some firms are hesitant to enable this button. They don't want users to disable cleaning. So it may be that you'll just want to hide this button altogether and not give users the ability to turn off cleaning. But if you did want to allow users to disable cleaning, we could leave this available to them. So I'll switch it back on so that everything's available again. And I'll move on to alerts on. So this lets us turn alerts off and on. And alerts are, we get alerted for what we call alertable metadata. And that would generally be track changes and comments. So as you may be aware, when a user sends an email, that they'll generally want everything to be cleaned, and that would include sort of sensitive information that could be contained in track changes and comments. But sometimes when we send an email, if we're collaborating with somebody outside of our firm on a document, we'll want to leave track changes and comments available. And so we can be alerted when track changes and comments are found to give us a choice of what we want to do with those track changes and comments. So that's what this is for. It's to turn alerts on and off. And that ties in with these buttons over here for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So we'll leave alerts on. We've got an option to clean metadata as we sort of compose emails in attachments, which we'll take a look at. And then we've got options here to clean on the server or clean locally. We'll just be looking at local because I believe you guys will just be using the Metadact desktop application. And we have various profiles we configure. Out of the box, we have default, high and low. I've created my own additional profiles, but out of the box, we'll have default, which is really contains our recommended set of cleaning actions. High will clean more metadata and low will clean less. Okay, so we've spoken about track changes and alertable metadata. So here's where we can change shortcuts to changing our default settings. So at the moment, by default, track changes, we accept all and we delete comments. And it may be that we know that we collaborate with people more often, and so we'll want to leave track changes and comments. So this is just a shortcut to changing those default settings. We have the same thing for Excel and PowerPoint. We don't have track changes, but we do have notes instead and comments. So these are shortcuts to changing those settings. I'll just put them back to where they were. Any questions around this at all so far?
Nope.
No? Good, great, thanks. Okay, so this next section is really useful. So we can convert documents to PDF or to PDF-A, and we can also secure those PDFs. So we can assign a password to open them, or we can assign a password to do various actions like copy content, print content. So so we have options for security on PDFs as well. And we can also zip the attachments and give that zip file a name. So here by default it will be called attachments.zip, but we can call it anything that we choose to. So what I'm going to do now is compose an email, and I'm going to head to the Terra button, the Terra tab, sorry. And again, what we can see is we can see the same buttons, but we also get an option to analyze metadata, clean and reattach, and we get attachment manager. And I'll just show you that as well, because that's a really useful feature. What I'll do, I'll start by attaching a file. I'll attach two files. So we've got options here. Okay, so what we have that's different is analyze and clean and reattach, and the cleaning options. So there's I'll just click on the cleaning options just so that you guys can see what that looks like. So here we can change metadata, but only metadata we're allowing users to change. So we could for example, personal information, we could leave that. And we can configure what users can change in the cleaning profiles in the LAP, which we'll take a look at after this. So, and we get the options to convert to PDF. So I'll just come out of that. This is really useful, analyze metadata. So this tells us what metadata we've got in those attachments, and it gives a really good picture of what metadata is contained in documents. We can also check to see that that they're actually cleaned when we do clean them. So here we immediately get this risk level. We've got an amber here, so we know we've got risky metadata in these documents, and we can sort of drill down and have a look at statistics, and this just gives us kind of number of characters and words. But what's more interesting is if we look at metadata detected, we can see this is color-coded red, amber, and green to show riskier metadata. We've got 22 built-in properties. We've got track changes here, 7 of them. And what we can do is drill down deeper and actually look at what that metadata is. So we can see who the author was, last saved by. We can look at what the actual comments are. We can look at track changes and see what's been inserted and deleted. So it's really a useful tool. So if I come out of here, then what we can do is clean and reattach. So we can actually clean metadata kind of on the fly before we send an email. And here, this is the alert that I was talking about in the main window, where we can turn alerts on and off. Oh, actually, I've got that. I can't access that because I've got this dialog box up. But this is the alerts we get for track changes and comments. And so here we get an opportunity to change the cleaning actions on those documents. I'll leave them as default, and then it will clean the attachments. And there we have now the cleaned attachments. And if we click on Analyze Metadata again, it'll go through and check what metadata is contained in there and give us a report. And here we can see straight away that risk level has gone to green. So I'm just going to have a look at metadata detected. We can see built-in properties. That'll be the created date will have been overwritten, and all the other risky red metadata has now gone. So track changes have gone, comments have gone. So that gives you a bit of reassurance that metadata has been cleaned. And
I've got a quick question here before you go.
Sure.
Okay. Well, we had a problem with Workshare Protect is when it would take it off to clean and then reattach, it would reorder the sequence of what the files were attached. Is that the same thing on this program? Or does it put it back into the position that it originally was?
But that's a really good question, actually. It puts them back into the position that they were, so you shouldn't have that problem. But what we have here, and actually I was going to come to this next, is Attachment Manager. And this is a really useful tool because it does actually let you reorder attachments, so which you can't do in Outlook natively. So so if you don't like the order the attachments are in, you can change them using Attachment Manager, but you won't have the problem that you had where it reorders them after they've been cleaned.
Okay, so it'll send out the way the person attached them in order then?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I'll head straight to Attachment Manager now, and here we can see we've got the two documents listed, and if we click on Edit, we can rename them, which is something you can't do within Outlook. So we'll call that document 1. And here you can see I can change the order of them. So I've moved document 1 and document to the bottom. But let me just change that back again. So this is where you can reorder the attachments. So it's a really handy tool. You can rename your attachments, and you can convert to PDF. So it's a really you can password protect them. So it's a really handy tool. Now what we can also do is create you can add more attachments as well, and we can create a binder as well with just bear with me. I'm just gonna okay, so it's saying that they're already cleaned. Okay, oh, it's just zipped that. Let me go back into Attachment Manager. Let me just remove those. I think it's because I'd already already cleaned them earlier that it could see they'd been processed. Let me go back into Attachment Manager and rename this. Okay, so here we go. So I've just added them to a binder. We can call this binder anything we want. We can add a table of contents and add a separator page. And if I save that, apply and reattach, then we get the binder. So this is really useful. So it joins both of the or if we wanted, if we had more documents, it binds them together. We get a table of contents. We can then jump to that first document. We get a header sheet, and then we get the document. So it's a really handy tool that we can use. And then we can send that. And then here we get options, and again we can go into cleaning options that we looked at earlier. We could skip cleaning, so that will just send the email without cleaning it. We can clean and review, which will show us the metadata that's been detected, or we can just clean and send. So we'll go ahead and clean and send, and that will clean the attachments and send them on. So that's the kind of the entire flow there. I'll just sort of go through that again. I'll attach another document. On send, and this is showing the alerts because we were in the previous email was a PDF. We didn't get the track changes and comments, but we do because it's with this because it's a Word document. Click OK, clean and send, and that's it. So the workflow is pretty straightforward. And of course, if you don't have track changes or comments within a document, you won't get that alert. So that's the mail flow. And I'll just show you one more thing. That's another handy tool that you get with Metadact. And it's called sensitive data handling. And you get to that by going to the About button, clicking on sensitive data handling. And this is really just an extra tool to help avoid email mistakes. Like if you reply to all, we can warn users that, okay, you know, if you reply to more than 5 users, do you really want to reply to all? Or we could prevent or warn sending to specific domains or email addresses. And we could split out BCC recipients. So if you're including a BCC recipient, you can have it so that BCC recipient is split off from the other recipients and can't accidentally reply to all when they, you know, it may be that you don't want the other recipients to know that you've BCC'd anyone in. So just some extra tools here to help avoid common email mistakes. And we'll look at how we configure this in the LAP. So that is the Outlook add-in. And I'll just quickly go through the Metadact application. So again, it's very similar. We see the same sort of buttons. We can add files, and we can just we can analyze the metadata. We can clean the metadata. We can select different cleaning profiles. We can also look at the actual cleaning profiles here. The columns are the different profiles and the rows are the different document types that can be cleaned. And when we take a look inside them, we can see again the color coding, red, amber, and green. And if we drill down further into like built-in properties, we can see further metadata types that can be cleaned. So as you can see, there's a lot of different metadata that can be that you can clean and set different actions to. So this is where a user would look at those at the actual cleaning profiles and what the cleaning actions on each metadata type are. But we'll also look at how we can configure this in the LAP. So I won't spend too much time on this because it's very similar to the Outlook add-in, but you can clean a file and save it locally, and then share that with you know, sort of uploading it to OneDrive or a USB drive, or sort of do what you plan to do with that clean document. Okay, just going to start up the LAP. And so this is where we configure these settings that are stored in C program data litera. Okay, and the LAP automatically picks up which applications we have installed that can be configured by the LAP. So I've also got Change Pro installed, so I can configure that there. I've got Secure File Transfer installed, but we're really concerned about these Metadact settings here. That's what we're interested in, and also these general settings, so we can integrate with iManage, so that we can open up documents or other DMSs, so we can open up documents direct from a DMS. We also integrate with the different Office applications, so Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. So that puts an Analyze button on those applications, so we can see the metadata contained in the document, and the Clean button as well, so we can clean while actually composing a document. I'll skip these other settings and head straight to Metadact Common Settings. So Metadact Common Settings, these settings here affect both the Outlook add-in and the Metadact desktop application. The Metadact group here is just settings for the Metadact desktop application, and Metadact Outlook is for the Metadact Outlook add-in. So I'm just going to head back up to Common Settings. This is if we have Server installed, which I'll just skip past. Profiles. So this is what we looked at in the Metadact desktop application, and here we can see various cleaning profiles, and we can double click onto those and change the settings. So we have in this case, this is alertable. Not all of the metadata, in fact, only a few metadata types have alerts. So if we click on something else, like maybe thumbnails, we can see we've just got delete and leave. Now, where we have the always there in front of delete and leave, what that always means is the user can't change that setting within a profile. So it is that cleaning action is fixed. They can never change if it's set to here to always delete. They can never change it to leave. It's a mandatory setting there. It's enforced on that profile. So we can see we've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, PDFA, and XPS. Any questions at all about these cleaning profiles? There is a lot of metadata in there. No, that's fine.
No questions.
Yeah, and what you'll find is sort of when you install this and you start playing with the configuration, you get a better feel for what everything does. There's also in the documentation, we also have an appendix that goes into more detail on what all of these metadata types are. But sort of out of the box, the default settings tend to be pretty good, and that's what we'd recommend. And of course, if you've got certain requirements and you want to make things look a little bit more like we all kind of currently using, you can of course tweak these settings. PDF security. So when we convert a document to a PDF, if we wanted to, we could automatically set a password that we can configure here, but it's more likely that you'll just want to allow users to convert to PDF when they choose to, and if they want to assign a password, then they would assign one of their choice. We can also hook into Azure Information Protection if you guys use that at all. And then I'll head down to the Metadact application. So here we can clean on local or server if we've got server installed, or just set that to local. We can set what the default cleaning profile is, which by default is default. And then we can persist user changes. So that just means that if a user changes any settings in the applications, that it will remember what those settings are and keep them for next time they start the application. And here we just have sort of what appears in the dialog box. So when we save a file, it will by default use the original file name. But if we wanted, we could, for example, add a dash clean to the end of the file name to signify that it's been cleaned. We can include a cleaning report in HTML format. We can convert to PDF. So we've got various options here. Local save to DMS, so we can choose to save to DMS if we have one, and the actual location. So it will default to the original document location, but you can of course navigate to any other folder that you want to save it to. This is just where it sort of defaults to, and various DMS options for new profile or a new version. And we can also, we've got an option to click a button in the application to email the cleaned document. And if we wanted to, we could assign an email subject like Metadact or something like that. And I'll skip the advanced settings because we only configure anything here if directed to by the dev team. Okay, so now we're looking at Metadact Outlook settings. So we've got more options to configure in here. So here we can again set where emails are cleaned, and here this is important. So cleaning is enabled by default, which is what we'll want. We can configure whether alerts are enabled by default. Here we can configure if we want users to be able to disable cleaning. So this is an important setting here, depending on what your preference is, whether you want to allow users to enable or disable cleaning. And here, if we want to allow users to enable or disable alerts. One thing I would suggest, if you are not going to allow users to do either of these things, like enable or disable cleaning or alerts, then I would suggest you hide the button. Otherwise, it will just be grayed out and they won't be able to do anything with it. So, and I'll show you how we can hide the button once we go down to the settings here. Okay, enable checking for passwords. This is only if we're using server.
I did have a question. So, I have the LAP installed on my machine, and
okay.
I've been playing around with it for about a month or so. My Word, Excel, PowerPoint options are all grayed out in Outlook. Where do I enable it in here?
Ah, right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll head back up there. That's a really good question. So this Litera integration section here, you want to make sure that these are all ticked.
They're grayed out for me. Like I can only check enable metadata cleaning.
Apologies. Yeah, because you've only got Metadact installed and not Change Pro. So yes, so if you tick the enable metadata cleaning for Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, then those buttons should become ungrayed in the applications. You'll have to restart.
They're in the actual applications, but in Outlook, you showed in your demo on the Litera tab having those options. I don't. They're all grayed out.
Or let me just check that I understand what you're referring to. So if you just bear with me. Okay. That's strange. My Outlook isn't popping up. Let me just restart it. I've got a dialog box hidden. So are you talking about the buttons on the Litera tab?
Correct. So
yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I'm with you. So what that will be, you'll need to change the actions on the cleaning profile. So these buttons here are grayed out.
Yes.
Okay. So I take it, have you got default profile as your default profile here?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So if we head to the LAP and to common settings and profiles, and if you go to your default profile and any other profile that you want to enable those buttons for, then for comments, at the moment you'll have the default setting, which is probably always delete, and so you'll want to change it to alert delete or alert leave, and then that button will be ungrayed. So at the moment, because you haven't got alerts enabled for those metadata types, they're grayed out. So
Okay.
you want to change comments to alert delete, track changes to alert set for all, and if you do the same for Excel, so alert delete for comments, alert accept all for track changes, and also for formulas, alert leave, and for PowerPoint, comments, if we change that to alert delete, and notes, if we change to alert delete, then you'll find that once you apply that and restart Outlook, these buttons should be ungrayed.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
That's okay. Okay, so I'll just head back to, so we're on the Outlook add-in. Okay, so here we can disable cleaning for specific document types if we wanted to. Like if we never wanted to clean Word documents, we could tick that, but we will most likely want to clean all documents. And this section here, convert to PDF, this isn't immediately obvious what it does, but so the tick here is saying enable converting to PDF. So that allows users to convert documents to PDF if they want to. And this disabled means that it won't automatically convert those documents to PDF. If we selected convert to PDF, say for example for Word, then all Word documents would be automatically converted, which is probably not what we want to do. So these settings as they are probably what you'd want to go with. If we head on to email, now by default the sender's email address or the domain for their email address will be an internal trusted domain. If you have any other domains, you can add them here. And if you have any specific email addresses that you want to trust, you can add them here. So this is how we tell Metadact what are trusted, and you will probably have this. You'll want to have this ticked here. I haven't for my test environment. And then what we've got are two columns here. So internal and external. So here we tell Metadact how to identify trusted emails, and then we tell Metadact what to do with those trusted emails. And generally, trusted emails we won't want to clean, so that will be unticked. And we'll generally only want to clean external going emails. So here, this is giving us a prompt, and that prompt is what you saw earlier where we had an option to skip cleaning or to analyze and send. So that's what that prompt is. And the enable alerts is enabling the alerts for track changes and comments that we saw earlier as well. So that's where we enable those settings. And we can also add a prefix or a suffix to the file name if we want to, like dash cleaned. But by default, it keeps the original file name after it's cleaned. So I'll now head down to show hide. So this is where we can hide buttons. So if you didn't want users to be able to disable cleaning, then we'd probably want to untick these buttons. If we didn't want them to be able to disable alerts, we could untick that button, or anything else. So for example, cleaning on local server, if we've only got Metadact desktop, we probably want to untick those buttons because they're only going to be able to clean locally. So this is where we can show and hide the different buttons on the Litera tab. Then if we head down to sensitive data handling, and this is what we looked at in Outlook. So this is where we can have corporate settings. For example, if we always wanted users to be alerted if they're replying to more than 5 users, or that could be any number that we choose, then we'd configure all of this here, and all these settings get saved in the C program data location that we distribute to the clients. So these are the same sensitive data handling settings that we look at in Outlook. Any questions at all about this?
Nope.
No, great. Okay, so that pretty much that kind of I've gone through everything. I guess at a fair pace, and so we've covered off the Outlook add-in and the buttons on the ribbon. We've taken a look at the Metadact desktop application, and we've taken a look at the LAP. So we've kind of covered off the 3 main components, and we've gone through the installation as well. So sort of the Metadact.msi and the folder where we distribute the settings. So any questions at all around any of that?
So from the folder, just the customized folder needs to be, the contents of the customized folder needs to be distributed, correct?
The important ones are corporate cleaning profiles, customize, ribbon, but I would suggest, to make things easier, that you just distribute the entire Litera folder.
Okay.
And if you do start using Change Pro later on, then you would use the same LAP machine to configure settings for Change Pro as well, if you've got any plans on using Change Pro in the future. So that's sort of Metadact in a nutshell.
So is the Workshare Compare a separate program than what this is? Do you have a Compare?
Oh, okay. So so Change Pro, Litera Change Pro is the comparison tool. Or we use we own Workshare Compare as well. So you can, that's configured in a separate utility if you were to use Workshare Compare. But if you were to use Change Pro, you'd configure that within the LAP.
Yeah, right now, Steve, the recommendation from our reps is to continue with Compare, but move to Metadact.
Okay, so my next question would be, how do you remove and leave Compare on the computer, because it's Workshare Pro that we have? So is there steps to removing the Workshare Protect program and leaving Compare Protect?
I see. Okay, so you're, yes, okay. That's a great question. Let me check that with you. Is there an option just to remove Workshare Protect separately, or does it all get installed as one program?
The last time I inquired about this, it was to do a full uninstall and then reinstall.
And reinstall Workshare Compare separately?
It is a bundled package. You can uncheck it. So I think you can go in there and modify from our.
Okay. So that would, yeah. So that would probably be the best option to modify. Are you guys using any sort of deployment tool at the moment?
No, we do have Intune or Microsoft Endpoint Manager, but
okay.
Last I checked, it was beastly to package this up in that format.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But yeah. So, and how many endpoints do you guys have?
150 to 160.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of, it's sort of the amount where I guess you may want to look into packaging it. But
is there a migration to take your Workshare Protect profiles and migrate them over to the Metadact profiles?
We don't have a tool to migrate the profiles, so it would be more of a kind of looking at what you currently have in place and kind of replicating that within Change Pro. Oh, sorry, within Metadact. Apologies. But you you know, the actual out of the box default settings are they are the recommended settings, so they will probably be fairly close to what you're currently using. And it's just if you've got any sort of specific cleaning actions that you've set on specific metadata types that you may want to tweak that. But you don't want to have Workshare Protect running at the same time as Metadact on the computer. So you do want to ensure that Protect has been removed first.
Just to be clear on the configuration thing, so there's one person has one program installed on their computer, and all the changes are made there, then the whole Latera folder is pushed out to the individuals?
Exactly, yeah. So you'd have one installation of the LAP,
Right.
and you really want to have that on one computer, because otherwise you'll end up with, you know, more than one sort of group of settings, and that would then be confusing to manage. So you really want to have one computer configuring your settings that get stored in C program data Latera. And if you think that you will have multiple people that would want to configure this, you may want to have this installed on maybe a VM that could be accessed by multiple people. And if it may be that you already have like an admin computer, like a VM set up that you have other tools installed on. So if you've got something in place that you can use, then that should be fine. One thing to bear in mind, though, that we do require Metadact to be installed. We require Office is installed, and of course the LAP and .NET 4.8. So if you do have an admin computer already available, that would probably be a good place to put the LAP.
So every time you do make a configuration change, though, you have to pull out this whole, push out this whole Latera folder to the endpoints?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you have a GPO in place, then you can copy these. Once you do make a change, you can copy these to the file share where you're pointing the GPO to, and just copy them all across. And what I would recommend is you do copy all the folders, because you don't want to be kind of looking at individual files and trying to figure out, you know, when you made a configuration change, which file that's going to affect, to save having to trying to figure that out. I would just copy the entire contents to the file share.
How does the licensing work? Do you have to push out a license file, or do they log on per machine to the Latera site and get the license that way?
So when you install Metadact, it will prompt you to put in a license key if it's done manually. So you should have. Do you guys have access to the customer center on the Latera.com website?
Yes, I've got the key.
Okay, great. So that's where you download software from, documentation, and your license key. So when you install Metadact, it will prompt you to put in your license key, or if you're deploying Metadact using the MSI exec command, you've got a switch you can use for that as well. I can show you that. It's in the documentation. Let's have a look here. Okay, so in the installation guide, we have some examples of switches that you can use. So here we can see this is the metadact.msi actual installation file. Here we've got a switch to put in the license key. options for no restart, quiet, and to accept the license agreement. And we can optionally, like we can select not to have some of the other integrations with the Office applications. So that's how you'd get the license key kind of installed on the computers.
How about on a license renewal next year?
So, well, that would get taken care of by your CSM, and as long as I think, you know, as long as everything is renewed, everything will continue to work as normal.
So you don't have to push out another license file for next year, is what you're saying then?
No.
Okay.
Any other questions? Does that kind of seem okay to you guys?
Yeah, it's helpful for me. I think the biggest part is just getting the profiles right.
Yes, yeah, exactly. You know, there are a lot of settings, but the default profile does, you know, they are pretty good settings. They're what we recommend. I'll just show you something here quickly as well about the profiles. So when we go into program data, the Terra corporate cleaning profiles, here we can see the actual files. So they relate to the cleaning profile. So we can see default, high, low, and these are like XML files that contain all of these settings that we're looking at in the LAP. Right, so hopefully this has been useful. And of course, you know, if you do have any other questions, you can always you know, contact support on support@theterra.com.